Welcome to the OverAnalyzers. I'm Dan. He's Mike. This week, we don't have a topic. I've had sort of an insane past few days, so
Would you
things have
call
been
it
kind of crazy.
a crappy few days?
We'll get to that. But
Okay.
yes, I would. But anyway, we don't have a topic this week. We have one for next week and the week after, and we're good for the future. But we figured today we would just hang out and kind of give an update on our lives and I don't know, just talk about stuff. So, how was your week?
Well, it's been pretty good. It's actually been an interesting week. Uh, I did 30 pull-ups today, which,
Congratulations.
yeah, I'm,
That's a
uh,
first, right? You've never done.
oh yeah, this is a big PR for me, a big thing I've been hoping to hit for a long time. And for anyone who isn't familiar with the innards of our Discord community, we've been doing a challenge for almost 3 months now, where you're supposed to try to do sets of pull-ups every day or close to every day, somewhere between 1 and 5 sets a day or something. So it's been a lot of pull-ups. I think I'm coming up on 2,000 now. And
I am not. I, I started doing when I first started. I think I was at like four. I did four pull-ups. And then I worked my way up to 10, which was great, and I was feeling really good for a while. And now I'm back down to like seven, or you
yeah.
know, I'm not on the same
Well,
level as you.
do you have any idea why it has worked and why it hasn't? Or
Yeah,
why it worked in certain periods and others?
yeah, but we can talk about me later. I want to finish what you're saying about.
Well, all right, here's what I've been really thinking about this week. I hit some pull-up goals, which is awesome. I'm really happy about it. But it kind of got me thinking about some things. Do you remember months ago? I mean, right at the start of this whole area that we got into of the meta learning and how to get good and that kind of thing. Remember when we decided that your time goes into the buckets? The
Yeah, you're either improving, you're either wasting your time, or I feel like there was three buckets. I don't remember
there
the buckets very well.
there was, you're either improving your mental model or you're improving on your fundamental skills, I think is what we said, or you're wasting time. Those were the three buckets we set up. And as time has gone past, I'm more and more sure that we were right. I really do think that's where your time goes. And we really latched on to the mental model bucket. We talked endlessly about mental models. It led us into areas of memory and space repetition and things like that. And just personally, I feel pretty good about that. I'm sure there's lots and lots of other aspects of it to explore, but for the most part, if I go to work on something, I feel reasonably in tune with the mental model part. I think I can kind of recognize when I have a good model and when I don't, and when something is missing. I have a pretty good sense of when I find new information and how I fit that into the mental model. I feel pretty good about that. And then bucket number three is kind of a bucket of exclusion, right? You don't have to pay too much attention to what wasting time means. If you can just identify whether you're doing buckets one or two, then if you're not doing that, then you're wasting time, right?
Right.
Bucket number two. What do we do with that one?
Wait, bucket number two is working on fundamental skills.
Yes. We haven't talked too much about that. We haven't really even defined what fundamental skills mean. And I'm starting to think that we need to put some attention into bucket number two. And here's part of what has made me think this way. First, with pull-ups, for example. Everyone who's participated in our challenge has had some different results. And it seems like a lot of people have had periods of growth and improvement and other periods of not. And I've had that too. I've had these portions of time where I've just started to get stronger and better at pull-ups, and others where it's completely flatlined or even regressed a little bit. And if you read a lot of the literature and discussion around a physical action like pull-up, you would think that it's mostly about just how strong your muscles are. And most people equate that with muscle size. I've almost doubled the amount of pull-ups that I've been able to do since the start of the challenge. And if anything, muscle size is smaller because I've been on a diet and I just weigh less. So unless magically my muscles got a lot bigger and I lost even more fat, which I do not think happened, my muscles are no bigger than when they started, probably less big, right? So mostly what is happening is a neurological adaptation. You know, your brain, nervous system, the lower motor neurons, all that stuff that goes into that system is just getting better at doing pull-ups. You can fire your muscles harder and faster. You're better able to do all that stuff and do more pull-ups. So the way I see it, I've been doing this thing, essentially asking my body to please adapt to this stimulus. Please get stronger. This is what I want. And to different degrees, my body has done that. And I think that that might be kind of how a lot of bucket number 2 works. In the sense that if you want to improve on something that's very fundamental, it's not, we need to figure out what that means. You know, pattern recognition would be one, right? If you're going to stare at a chessboard, you know, you might understand the rules of chess, you might even have a pretty good mental model, but you want your mind to recognize certain things. They need to pop out at you in this very low level pattern recognition type of way. You know, if you're going to ask your body or your brain to get better at that, how do you do that? And it's not, I mean, it's related to having a good mental model, making sure that you're doing the right things, but on some other level, you're trying to just get your body and your brain to adapt to something. And how do you do it?
Well, how did you do it for the pull-ups?
Well, I don't exactly know because like I said, sometimes it worked pretty well and sometimes it didn't. But I think the
Well,
reason why it go ahead.
well, because I think we typically think of, an exercise or some kind of physical buildup that you're working towards, like with pull-ups. You think that you just need to try harder, do
Right.
more pull-ups, be more disciplined, just pull up harder,
Yeah.
Uh,
And that's why I think the answer is more interesting because I have not been the most consistent with pull-ups. Not even close. And I've gone through pretty long stretches of really falling off or only doing 1 set a day when I intended to do 5 or something. In fact, I don't think I've ever done 5 sets in 1 day. And I also haven't tried that hard. I mean, there's been a couple sets where I've, really gone to failure or close to it, but for the most part, I've quit when I kind of just didn't feel like doing anymore. I'd
Alright,
hit
well,
some
what
minimum
changed?
target.
Because there was a guy in the Discord
Mm-hmm. Torsk.
challenged you to, first to 30,
Mm-hmm.
and it seemed like your numbers picked up a whole lot after that.
Well,
So, was it that do you think that added a lot to it? I mean, it certainly
I,
seemed like it, but
I think it probably did. I think there's definitely an emotional component in there, but again, I didn't, I didn't really try super hard. I think, I think sleep has something to do with it because that's been something that I've really been prioritizing lately. And we can talk more about that if we want. I've almost finished reading Why We Sleep, which I would say is the scariest book that I've ever read. It's great though. I highly recommend it. So I've been prioritizing sleep a lot. I have I have not eaten a calorie that I have not weighed and logged in 3 months. And I mean that because I've been on this diet. And even though I'm losing weight, which generally you would associate with being weaker, I think because I've been controlling the diet so carefully and hitting protein targets and keeping the macros like really where I want them, that my body's actually doing pretty well in terms of being able to adapt to the stimulus of pull-ups. Basically, I think that the reason why it's worked pretty well for me And I've been doing pull-ups for a long time. I've been stuck at much lower numbers for years even. I think that it's a lot of different factors that have come together to, allow my body and nervous system to adapt to that. And I think that similar things happen when you start talking about other adaptations to your nervous system, like being able to do something faster or more accurately, or recognize patterns more quickly, that kind of thing. Did you part of my recent obsession with this is because I've started listening to the Andrew Huberman podcast.
Yeah.
Have you
Yeah,
you're
I
familiar
listen.
with
I
this?
listened to one episode. I haven't had time to do anything this week. I feel
Right.
the total opposite of you.
Well, okay.
So,
All right. Well, let me finish my thought, and then we maybe get into the dark side of things, which is your life right now.
right.
Uh, but I've been listening to the Andrew Huberman podcast, and everyone probably knows who he is because, judging by his subscriber numbers, he's like the
Right.
Squid Game of YouTube right now, and he has been almost doubled overnight. So if you haven't heard of him, the YouTube algorithm will show him to you very soon. He's amazing. He's great. He is a professor of neurobiology from, I think, Stanford. He's very well spoken. He does this kind of like semi-applied neurobiology, uh, or neuroscience. He talks about a specific topic, and part of it is specific recommendations of here's what you can do and here's what might be helpful. Other parts of it are a little more general and conceptual, but it's great. It's really, really great. But it's made me think a lot about the neuroscience of it, and how those certain behaviors, certain okay, let me back up. Here's an example that blew my mind a little bit. This isn't from Andrew Huberman, although he said similar things. This is from Matt Walker in his book How We Sleep. He, as I said, the book is amazing, really fascinating, and it's as much about neuroscience as it is about sleep. I mean, I guess they're kind of overlapping, but he talks about one experiment that he did in his lab where he had these people, and he was inspired by a pianist. This pianist was talking to him at some conference, and this guy said, you keep talking about sleep, and I've wondered something. I work on a piano piece, and I might play it all day, or I'm really, struggling with it, and there's some part that I just can't quite get down, and I'll go to bed frustrated, and then I wake up, and I can just do it. No effort at all. It just works. And Matthew Walker was like, that's really interesting. There's no science that supports that. We have no idea what that, is, or if it even is a real thing and not just an anecdote, but that's really fascinating. The guy's like, cool, and left. And that got Matthew Walker really interested in this idea of, is there something really happening there? And so he does this experiment where he brings a bunch of people into the lab, and he has them, I think what he did was he took right-handed people and had them type with their left hand on a keypad or something. And he gave them a sequence of numbers that they had to type. And so they had to learn it, and they're sort of uncomfortable because people don't usually type numbers with their left hand. And so he gives them a string of numbers, and they have to type it. And he gives them like a practice session of 10 or 15 minutes or something. And they start to learn how to do it. And eventually by the end of the session, they're able to type in these numbers with reasonable competence. And he took one group and he taught them this in the morning, and then he retested them in the evening. So, 10 to 12 hours later, but no sleep in between. This is just beginning of the day, end of the day. And he found that they were about at the same level. They didn't get better. They didn't get worse. They could just pretty much do the same thing. He took another group and he taught them this on this keypad in the evening, and then waited until the next morning and then tested them. So the difference between these two groups was that one group, they went for the same amount of time, but one of them went for that time through the day, and the other group went throughout that time overnight. So they'd slept in between. And the group that slept was way better. They woke up, they did it again, and they were just better at it. They were faster, they were smoother. And in particular, this is what was really interesting, was that he said that the group that hadn't slept, the way they typed was very chunky. They would, if they had to type out 10 digits, they'd type out 3, and there'd be this little pause, and then 4 more, and then a little pause, and then the rest. It was like things were kind of chunked in their brain, and they came out chunked, which very much lines up with my experience of learning things, and that you have these groups in your mind, and that's how you pick stuff up. But then the slept group didn't work that way. It all just came out smoothly. It's like the chunks weren't really there anymore, and they'd all been ironed out into this smooth thing. And he goes into all these other studies and MRIs and whatnot, looking at what's actually happening. And what's happening is people, there's a bunch of really interesting things. One is that when these people go to sleep, they get like things light up around that specific area of their brain. They call them sleep spindles. And they happen during, if I remember this right, I think they happen during non-REM sleep at the end of the night. But the group that had been practicing, they go to sleep, and there's these little electrical impulses right near the section of the brain that they were using to do the typing with. Like the sleeping brain is actually reinforcing that. And in terms of memory, if you learn something and then recall it during the day, like before you've slept, you recall it out of your hippocampus, this, little section of the brain that's kind of near your brainstem. But overnight, it actually gets moved from the hippocampus into the neocortex, which is like the big kind of part of the brain that looks like brains, the big wrinkly part. It actually moves. And so when you recall it, you're recalling it from somewhere else. You're actually getting it from the neocortex in your brain. Anyway, long tangent there. It's getting into neurobiology and the neuroscience has made me really start to think about the mechanisms that are at play that cause your mind to adapt to something on a level that's not conscious. And I've started to think about, how do I optimize that? How do I make sure that I work on a skill, or doesn't have to be me playing Starcraft or chess or something like that. It can be anything that I'm interested in. But how do I develop those kinds of skills? What are the optimal ways of doing that? And clearly there's this relationship between your conscious mind, you choosing to do something and gathering information, and then your unconscious mind, like when you're asleep, or even when you're just defocused and not consciously applying your attention to something. Things are being moved and transformed and developed in your brain. And in the same way that I ended up being pretty successful with this pull-up challenge, I was able to hit my goal of 30 even a couple weeks early, which is amazing. I think that was due to some somewhat coincidental things that I've been doing in my life that really added up to that working really well. And I've started to think that I really want to pay attention to those things for the mental aspects of my life and try and figure out what are the most optimal ways to do it.
Well, it sounds like you're operating pretty well.
Well,
So you're sleeping enough. You're counting every single calorie you have.
the calorie thing is not related to my desire to be smarter, I guess, more mentally fit.
Well, yeah, but that plays into sleep and
It does.
overall
Right.
feeling good.
Right. The sleep I've started trying to improve because I have been a terrible sleeper for my whole life for lots of reasons, most of which are hopefully my fault. And I mostly was motivated to do that from a fitness perspective, thinking, I'm lifting, I'm trying to get stronger at these things. So I keep hearing from all the elite fitness, the lifters and athletes and everything, how important sleep is. So I'm thinking, well, I should really try to work on that because maybe that'll improve my fitness. But now I'm starting to think that it's just improving my life, just in general. My mood is improving, becoming more stable. I don't have as many episodes, at least, of like feeling irritable or depressed or anxious. Like that's improving a lot. The pull-up challenge has gone really well, like I said, but now I'm starting to think that this has a lot to do with my ability to focus, the neurochemicals in my head, adrenaline, acetylcholine, dopamine, all the stuff that uh, Andrew Huberman's been talking about. It's just gotten me really interested in this area.
Yeah, I feel like I have no takeaways like that. So
It's not a takeaway yet. It's more of an area that I've gotten really interested in. And even after really only a few weeks of effort, I'm starting to feel some really interesting, very promising changes. I'm very excited about it in a sense of, but really there's two things that I've been really thinking about. One is sleep, and then the other is focus. I think it was Zach said something in the Discord a few weeks ago about how he had decided that it was the season of focus for him. I
yeah,
think it's something that CG Pre-Dre does, like picks a thing and focuses on that for a while, which in this case it's focusing on focus. That really like hit me in the right way of I think I want a season of focus too. And I've really been thinking about that. And I'm starting to notice how bad it is for me. And I'm starting to think more and more about how I think it matters a lot. One of the most interesting ideas here from Andrew Huberman and from this book I'm reading, Why We Sleep, is that there is this relationship between waking brain and sleeping brain, or even conscious brain and unconscious brain. You know, you're developing certain things in your conscious mind, and then hopefully your unconscious mind is putting them in the right places, storing the right information, and so on. But what's really cool is that your brain, while you sleep, it selectively stores certain things. You know, it attempts to pick out what is important and store that in a more permanent way, or develop those skills in a certain way. Like with the people typing on the keypad, they got this electrical activity, these sleep spindles, in the area of the brain that they were using for that particular motor activity. And it's made me start to think your brain has to decide this somehow, or your inner workings of your brain have to decide what information gets stored and what doesn't. And one of the more interesting experiments they did was they were teaching people something. I think it was a memory task. And they gave them some cue, just this random thing that happened during a task. I think it was a tone or something like that. Just an audio tone that they played. And then while they were sleeping, they played that tone back. And they had two groups where they did this with the tone, and they had another group where they didn't do this with the tone. And the group that they played this tone to, they didn't wake them up, they just played them this sound while they were sleeping. Those people remembered this memory task way better. And they've done brain scans and things while they're sleeping, and they noticed that if they play this tone, the brain just starts processing those things. It's like what your brain decides to do at night is those things, those memory tasks. And so it reinforces that, and that's stored more permanently in their brain the next day. And what it really made me think about was how I struggle to go to sleep at night. Oftentimes, you know, for different reasons, but one of the big ones is the ocean full of monsters around me, which was a metaphor that you proposed, how you're spending a lot of time thinking about crappy things. And it sounds like it may be that if you go to sleep thinking about a bunch of stuff, it could be really scary things, you know, existential crisis type stuff, or it could just be irrelevant things, dumb arguments I saw on the internet or whatever. That kind of stuff is being queued up in your brain as you're going to sleep. And it's likely, it seems, that that's the kind of thing that your brain is reinforcing overnight. But I don't care about that stuff. I don't want that kind of thing to be reinforced in my brain. I want my brain to work on and focus on the things that I care about. Happy thoughts, and or even just things that I'm working on and trying to improve on and wanting to remember. I want those things to be queued up in my brain so that that gets developed overnight. And I've started to pay more attention to that. And I've, like I said, noticed that my brain is mostly full of crap as I go to sleep. And it's usually full of crap when I wake up. And I really, really want to change that. I would like the focus water to be running very clear. And I want my mind to be focused on the things that I want it to be focused on. And it's not just a, oh, that just seems better and it seems healthier type of thing. It's a it seems like there's a very direct relationship between what you think about and what your mind is focused on and what actually gets stored in your mind and the way your brain adapts to those things.
Well, do you think you've made any headway with sleep? I mean, it sounds like you're sleeping more. Are you
Yes.
able to kind of make some progress on getting rid of those thoughts as you fall asleep or as you
Yes.
try to fall asleep?
Yes.
Well, what have you been doing differently?
Well, so we did our podcast on sleep, right? And a lot of what we talked about there is still what I think is important. There's been a couple other additions. One is that I think I've started to become more religious about it. You know, the routine, the timings, trying to limit light exposure in the evenings. Every morning. Okay, here's a couple specific things that I've done. The phone, my phone, is no longer allowed to cross the threshold of the bedroom. There is an invisible force field at the doorway and it can't pass. So that means that I don't go to bed with the phone in the room anymore. If I'm
Good
laying in bed
job.
and I can't, right, I know that
Yeah.
you have that sorted out for yourself, but I hadn't got there yet. If I want to go to bed, I can't do it with the phone. If I can't sleep and I, don't want to lay there, then I have to get up and leave the bedroom and I can go read or I can be on the phone if I really think I want to or whatever. But regardless, it can't go in the bedroom. I also can't wake up with the phone. This is another idea from some of this neurobiological or neurobiology research stuff is that when you're waking up, there is this bit of a transition from sleep to wakefulness. And the way Andrew Huberman put it is that if you're being distracted in the morning, you're kind of missing the download in that you're same as what I just said. Like you're trying to keep things clear and your mind focused on the things that you care about and want to pay attention to, not stupid shit on the internet. So no phone in the morning. I have a routine now. It's pretty strict. I wake up at 9, use the bathroom, weigh myself, get dressed, go down to the basement and meditate for 8 minutes, do a set of pull-ups. Then I grab a cup of coffee and I go sit on the front porch and look out into the sunlight and try to get sun. And I'll sometimes read a little bit or just sit there, or I'll review my flashcards and that kind of thing. But no phone until I'm done with that. And then I go inside and start work and then back on the phone. So I and then same thing at night. I try to no phone before bed for at least an hour. I basically tried to create this much longer stretch of time where my thoughts are quiet and focused, and I think about the things I want to think about, and there's no phone distracting me or a laptop with things like that. That's been a big change. And the sleep it's not perfect, but it's progressively getting much better. I'm actually able to wake up in the morning without an alarm clock and I have a desire to get out of bed. At 9 o'clock, I wake up and I'm feeling like, oh, I'm ready to get up. I don't have to force myself and have this, awful, what's it called, sleep momentum or whatever, where I just feel groggy and crappy and want to lay there half awake for 3 more hours. So that's been good.
Oh, wait, maybe you said how many hours of sleep are you getting a night or
Well,
trying to get?
I want to get 8.5 or so. Fun fact: those sleep spindles that happen in this experiment that Matthew Walker did with the keypad stuff, they happen at the end of the night in the early hours of the morning during, I believe it was non-REM sleep. So if you're getting 6 hours of sleep, that doesn't really happen. So I just wanted to throw that fact your way.
Oh, well, ever since our sleep episode, I didn't realize how weird it was to only sleep 6 hours a night. I thought that was actually quite a bit for, people working in an office or
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. But after everyone in the Discord's like, how do you do 6 hours a night? Or how do you sleep that little? Or how do you do it? I'm like, okay, I guess I'm weird. So I've been trying to get more sleep. Um, and I probably have been getting some more, but getting more sleep led to a whole spiral of a lot of other things getting lost. I
Like
don't
a
I don't know if I really want to get into everything awful because everything you've been saying has been so peaceful and wonderful.
Oh, that's fine. We
Um,
can do a everything is terrible episode next week if you want.
yeah. Oh, it's not that everything's terrible. I just had, I don't know, lots of stressful stuff
Yeah.
come up. But yeah, I've also been trying to get more sleep and realizing how awful I feel when I don't get enough sleep. Or I'm realizing that I've always felt awful. That 6 hours a night
Yeah.
leaves you feeling, or less than 6 hours a night. That's really when you feel bad. But I mean, it's just the pure exhaustion through the whole week where you can't get past 6 hours, um, like every day, and yeah, it builds up, and you feel very bad. So I agree. I'm not saying that my sleep
Right.
schedule was or is like the way to do it.
I think what's happening for me is that the idea of sleep and the ideas of sleep and focus and mental calmness or even heightened focus. Part of what I'm also really working on is the ability to focus very hard and very intently for a certain amount of time without my focus slipping or getting distracted. So in a sense, I'm not trying to be I'm trying to be more singular in my focus, but I'm also trying to focus harder than I have. Anyway, what's really started to change for me is that I'm no longer really looking at the ideas of sleep and calmness and focus and all that as just these things that are good for you. I feel like anytime somebody says, "Oh, you should eat vegetables every day, they're good for you. You should floss your teeth because it's good for you." The "it's good for you" thing just does not work for me. If I'm thinking, "Oh, I need to sleep an extra hour because it's good for me," I just don't feel it. But if I've started to think that sleeping consistently and getting the right amount of deep sleep and so on allows me to get stronger every day and do more pull-ups, and it allows me to store memories, and specifically the ones that I want. The idea that me being able to focus more intensely and in a more singular kind of way allows my brain to achieve more neuroplasticity and actually adapt to what I'm trying to get it to adapt to, like that is suddenly really compelling. And so it's not just that I want to do these things because they're good, it's that I'm starting to associate these things with an actual concrete measurable result that I can see, and that's pretty exciting to me.
That is exciting. Well, I'm not at your state of nirvana, okay,
I
that
am
you seem to have reached, but
This has only been like a week or two, so
right. And I'm excited for next week, when it all falls apart.
yeah,
But
exactly.
because that always seems to be the pattern. We get confident in our schedules,
Mhm.
and then they all go to hell. But that's kind of what was happening with me. But my sort of takeaway or lesson learned recently is, well, nothing too crazy happened, but I'll just kind of summarize it. But
Yeah.
well, we waited years. We moved into this house, and we waited a few years uh, till we finally kind of had enough money to buy this privacy fence that goes around our house, because we have two dogs, and we've always wanted like a big privacy fence because
Mhm.
we're sort of surrounded by neighbors, and they keep building houses, and there's just more and more people like constantly staring at you. So we finally, get the money to do the privacy fence. We get this really cool fence, and we order it, and then it doesn't come in for another 6 months because all the materials are backloaded or whatever.
Yeah.
So we finally get it up a couple months ago, probably. Um, and then a couple days ago, septic system started acting weird, to the point where you can't take a shower without the water backing up and everything. So you can't use the plumbing. So get the septic guys out here, and I have a completely faulty tank, drain field. Every single thing attached to the septic system is just
Oh, you have your like a septic tank and that whole deal.
septic tank, drain field, yeah. Yeah, all of that. And it's all from the 70s. So we have a older house
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, it's just gone and destroyed. So I have to replace that completely. It's he said it's at least $10,000 so far, which is like painful. Uh, was not wanting to deal with that right now, but so we got to replace that. In order to replace that, we have to rip out the fence that we just put in, because it's of course right underneath the fence. And then like a week ago, I had to replace a couple tires on my car and fix the AC and like, all of these little things. And
Mm-hmm.
then we just had to fix Heather's car. And I don't know. It's been like 20 or 30 of like those types of things all in a row, all at
Yeah.
once. And 2 weeks ago, I started going back to work full time. Whereas the last, how long has it been? A year and a half, 2 years since Rona. I've been working from home ever since then. So
Right.
2 weeks ago, I go back to work full time every single day, driving forever and then working in an office. And that's when the sleep schedule gets totally obliterated and I'm feeling exhausted every day. And then all this stuff. And it's nothing really all that terrible. I'm fine. I'm not like in a deep depression or something, but the stress level is uh, very high and the money very low. And and all the little the dreams that you have, like all these new
Mm-hmm.
pursuits that I've had because I've had some extra time during the pandemic, all of those are just dying, and I'm watching them die as everything else around me is kind of breaking. So, all of these new little art pursuits that I've got are fun little things for focus and our pull-up contests and all these things that I've had a little extra time to do. Now
Yeah.
they're just falling behind and it's it's stressful because I feel like I'm failing at certain things. You get to talk about how great you're doing. I get to talk about how bad I'm doing now. So it's just frustrating. But one thing that has happened is over the last year or two, I've been extremely like gung ho on, focus, 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 and work, 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 and just get all of these things
Yeah.
done. And I haven't really taken a second to just step back and like you know, look at life or just think about anything other than just working really hard all the time. And so over actually in the last week, my washing machine broke. So I had to spend, the last bit of my day coming home from work working on that. And then I couldn't fix it that day. So I had to fix it the next day. I had to take it all apart and fix that. And then the day after that, I had to fix my sprinkler pipes because the guys that were putting in the fence broke the sprinkler pipe, so I had to fix that. And I ended up spending the whole day, driving back and forth from Lowe's because I bought the wrong stuff, and you know,
Yeah.
just typical house project problems. But in because it's been like multiple days and like weeks of me not being able to work on all the things that I've really wanted to work on, I had to go through this process of getting really, really frustrated and fighting it and like, you know, tightening your grip even more and then just having to let go because I can't handle it. Like I had to let go of a lot of these things that I really wanted to do. And I've just been forced to step back and deal with stupid things that I don't want to deal with. Other people find a lot of joy in this, but I don't see it. But what I have found is that I don't know. It's been really good to just step back. Like at first I was really frustrated and, kind of depressed and felt a little like
Mm-hmm.
a failure, but I think this weird horribleness is kind of what I needed. Something to just really push me back and think and I don't know, just feel life and just see some of the bigger picture stuff. It hasn't all been horrible. Like a lot of my friends recently, a couple of my friends recently have had babies, and I've been to like a baby shower recently, and I don't really, you know, babies or whatever. But it's been really nice to spend some time with friends and their families, and I don't know, just realize that there's a lot of good things in my life that I don't want to take advantage of. And I don't know. I've just been so focused lately and so quick to turn down plans
Yeah.
and say no to hanging out or whatever that recently I've been and the other day because the plumbing's so bad, I stayed over at mom and dad's and it's just cool to hang out with them, talk about I don't know, normal stuff, see the old house uh, where you grew up, and then go to the town that you grew up in and talk to our cousin for a while and I don't know, just hung out, drank some beers and whatever. And it was just like different stuff. It's been sort of a horrible vacation that's turned out to be kind of
Yeah.
positive in a weird way. So I don't know totally what the takeaway is, but I guess for me, it's just I need to be able to step back more often.
Maybe maybe you're the one who's achieved nirvana
Oh,
and
I
I'm just
not
excited about some random thing.
no, but I mean it makes me think of all the neurological stuff too. I mean, I want to know what's going on and the habits like and conditioning yourself to go to sleep on time and get enough sleep. Like that's what I want. Like I want to be able to sleep enough. I want to be able to explore like working out more and exercising
Hmm.
and actually I've been thinking a lot about health recently. You know, everybody's getting older and keep hearing about stuff and so I've been thinking about, well, maybe I can take a more scientific approach to health rather than just, do what feels good all the time because that only gets you so far. So I would like to start exploring some new, I don't know, scientific ways of being healthier. I don't even know what that means, but you know, I I've been but that's also kind of been the frustrating thing is I am really interested in I don't know, coming up with great routines and conditioning myself to be smarter and more wonderful, but then life just keeps like kicking me in the face. So it I need to learn how to be more adaptive to this stuff, I guess. I don't know. Cuz like I'm curious what you would do in my situation. Like if you had to drive 2 hours every day and had to work in an office for 9 hours at least. Like how would you handle that? I'd be interested in what you would do differently.
Well,
Or maybe that's the thing. Maybe I shouldn't do this. Maybe that's the dumb part. I don't know.
I mean the genuine honest answer is that there is a reason why I work from home and
Right.
don't even own a car.
Right.
Is because I don't want to do that.
Yeah. I
So that's the honest answer.
think that's a good answer. Um,
In terms of what should you do, assuming you are remaining in that situation, I don't know.
well, you just ask yourself, what is not up to you and what is up to you? What
Yeah,
can
of
you change to
course.
be better? Are you doing the best that you can do with this? So I don't know. Probably not. But
What do you do in the car on the way there and back?
well lately I haven't even really been listening to music. I just kind of think through sometimes some of the topics that we talk about, sometimes some of my own topics that I'm interested in. I just kind of think through it. Sometimes I talk about it,
Yeah.
uh, even though that's a little weird. Um,
Hey, I I don't have a car, so I do my thinking and talking out loud while I'm walking around the neighborhood. And
oh, that's a little weirder, yeah. But
yeah, at first I would hold my phone up to my head. It was off, but I just hold it there so people would think I'm talking. And then
right, no,
that
I
got to
don't
be a
do that.
pain, so I figured I'll wear headphones like the white Apple headphones, and then they'll assume that I'm talking there. But then I just gave that up, and I'm just the guy who walks around talking to himself,
You're in Portland, so I think you're good.
I guess. I
But
guess.
well, I do that in the grocery store. I talk to myself in the grocery store. I don't know why, but I guess that's just another time where I'm alone and I'm walking around. So yeah.
Well, here's this doesn't really help, but what I've really been thinking about lately is one, I want to be healthy and happy, right? We're going to live for a while and then we're going to die. And whether you become a great artist or not, at some point it gets a little bit philosophical on does
Yeah,
it
yeah.
matter, whatever. So being healthy and happy, I think, needs to be pretty up there in terms of priorities. So I've mostly thought about physical health. That's been a something I've cared about for a long time, and even more recently, just started to think more about for the same reason. Getting older, life is kind of settled in. I'm married now, working a job, living in the house. There's no major changes coming up that I know of, knock on wood. So if I don't have good habits going into, the next 2 decades or however many decades, then,
Right.
things aren't going to go well. So I just really want to be pretty well set up for that. But I've thought about that from a health perspective on I want to eat right. I want to be at a healthy body weight. I want to be strong. I want to have a good cardiovascular system, all the usual stuff. And really, the crossover point was sleep. I started thinking, man, I don't think my sleep's very good. I think that'll improve my health. And then that kind of put me into this window of, wait a second, this is improving a lot of the mental health aspects. And I feel like mental health might not be quite the right word for what I'm thinking about. Maybe like mental fitness or something.
I
Because
mean, yeah,
just mental health gets used very broadly, and I don't know if I like that.
you
You
want a
know,
more special word when it applies to you.
no, I just don't want to.
All right, let's call it
I,
mental fitness. Does that make
yeah,
you
I
feel
think
better?
that's because I'm not saying that I'm struggling with, clinical depression right
Yeah,
now.
yeah,
It's that I'm trying to be more focused,
yeah.
not be context switching all day, not be getting upset about dumb internet things, and, you know, putting my attention to the things I want, stuff like that. Anyway, I've started to really
Mental
get interested.
clarity.
Yeah, but
Clarity.
I like mental fitness. That seems, I think, not too pretentious and wishy-washy. I don't know. I
All right.
started to think about that a lot. And part of the motivator is that I want to achieve neuroplasticity in certain areas, be able to adapt and understand and develop my brain. But also, I don't want to be anxious during the day. I don't want to be stressed out or depressed or irritable, all those things. So I guess whether everything's going pretty well and you're really focused on the stuff that you're interested in, or things are not going well and you need a $10,000 septic system and your washer breaks over and over, whatever. In either case, in some ways, the same thing applies in that you're trying to get yourself through the day, the weeks, feeling okay. And, if stressful things are happening, then you're trying to manage the stress. And, if you're driving to work and having to work for 9 hours and driving back, you're trying to figure out how to make that, not crappy. I want to talk more about some of these things in the future, in particular the neuroscience angle. I've started to really read and dig in a little bit, and there's some pretty interesting things, and a lot of it is really recent. I mean, in just
Yeah.
recent years. So 10 years ago, I had, not that I looked into it too heavily, but I wasn't that excited about what I was finding in neuroscience. Now there's some pretty cool stuff, and there's some pretty cool studies and information out there that make me really want to dig into that more, because I think it actually does begin to give us a better picture of what is really going on. There's actual chemicals in your brain that we can measure and we can associate with certain behaviors and things that really have an effect on the way you experience things, on your emotion, on your focus, on your everything. So I think that could be some really cool stuff. And like I said, the driving force is that for me, the the question was, what about bucket number two? What about getting your mind to adapt to things on a very unconscious primal level? And I think that actually it opens up a whole lot of very interesting avenues of just mood and your mental fitness, if we can call it that. But I want to talk more about it.
All right.
Well, thanks for hanging through this one. If you're still there, it's a little different. But leave us a comment and tell us what you've been up to this week or the past few weeks, or what your thoughts are on any of those different ramblings. You can leave a comment here. You can talk to us in Discord. It's almost over, but you could participate in the pull-up challenge if you want. And you can email us at the overanalyzerspodcast@gmail.com. We'll see you next week.